Welcome to Real Money, Real Life, the podcast where we get real about money and the messy human stuff that comes with it. I'm Linda Grizely, financial wellness speaker, personal finance educator, and creator of the Me Money Method. This is the show for people who feel behind financially and want to finally understand money and make confident decisions that work in their real life. Because money isn't just math, it's life. And you deserve to feel confident with money and good about how you spend it. Hello, everyone. Today, we're talking about empty nesters, but this conversation is really about what happens when the money, time, and energy that used to be organized around your kids starts to shift. A lot of people think this stage should automatically feel easier because cash flow may improve once the kids are off the payroll. But in real life, more breathing room can also create a new set of decisions. What do we do now? Are we behind? Can we spend some of it? Do we need to catch up? And maybe the deeper question is, what does this next chapter need from us? My guest today is Lena Nebel. She is the Chief Executive Officer of BFG Financial Advisors, where she works primarily with engineers and corporate executives. With more than 2 decades of experience in financial planning, Lena is known for her thoughtful, detail-oriented approach and her commitment to truly understanding each client's story. She was the first female president of the Financial Planning Association of Maryland and remains a passionate advocate and mentor for women entering the financial profession. Hello, Lena.
Hi, good to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. I am really looking forward to this conversation because a lot of my listeners are at that point where they're finally finding time for themselves and trying to figure out their finances and what it all means. So this is a great topic. And I would love to hear about how you work with people who are navigating this and why maybe you chose to specifically work with these types and all that great stuff of your story about how you got here.
Sure. That's a lot to unpack.
Yes, it is. All that stuff. Just tell us everything.
When you said nearly, 2 decades of experience, I was doing the math in my head. I'm like, oh wow, I'm pushing 30 years actually, like close to 30 years. Haven't yet said the full 30 yet. And when I was thinking about that, it's, I grew up with some of these clients and seeing their lives change, and we put the kids through college, and now kids have graduated and they are literally off the payroll. So I decided to write that ebook about empty nesters because I was seeing more and more clients kind of going through that process and was able to formulate, okay, here's kind of some common themes and everything that I was seeing through that. I've been in, as I mentioned, in the planning side for close to 30 years. I've leaned more towards the engineers, probably because I enjoy spreadsheets and I'm more patient with them. Not a lot of financial advisors will tend to be with the engineers, but I've also worked with a lot of females going through transitions, whether it's a divorce, whether it's a death. And part of that is as they're navigating no longer having the kids in the house too. So there's a lot of different demographics centered around empty nesters. I mean, we could really have a show for each one probably.
That is so true. I have that same experience in working with people like that. Let's talk about your book. What is your book focused on?
Sure. So it's focused on you're an empty nester, now what, right? What are the things that you want to focus on? What are the things that are a challenge? How do we bring it back to you? I love how you said how you focus your time and the energy on kids. Now it's time to, be selfish and let's put it back to you. So it's re-examining, well, what are your goals? What do you want to do in this next chapter? Do you want to continue working where you are? Maybe you were only doing that because it had fantastic benefits and income that was needed to support this family. So first and foremost, it's just having that conversation. What's our next phase look like? And then building the plan around that. Within the book, we talk a lot about kind of some different areas that to focus on, some different topics that we want to talk about and everything. And I wouldn't say there's any one top area to start with because every situation is going to be different. For empty nesters, they may now find themselves being Nana and Pop-Pop, and now they're all of a sudden babysitters. And now what? Now we have a different shift that we're focusing on too. So I would say that it's very broad in nature, but that was by design because it's really a conversation starter. That's really the point of it is I'm an empty nester. Just give me the basics. What is some of the things to start so we can have that conversation and begin planning and then start shifting the focus on, am I on track for retirement? What does retirement look like now? So I love the idea about being selfish again, and you've put so much time and energy on everybody else around you. You get to really spend the time on you, and it's, you need to make it purposeful in what you want and to see if it's realistic.
Yeah. And we often talk about retirement as being a different way of thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you've been saving money your whole life and now you got to spend money for the rest of your life. And that's just a whole reframe of a mindset right there. But I think that people sometimes don't realize that even empty nesters have a frame of change there. And I think some people do get caught off guard. What are the things that you see that maybe people get caught off guard a lot by? Common ones?
Yeah. So a big one is they're not used to the extra cash flow because there actually is cash flow. And before it was just getting spent on a variety of different things. But now the bank account balances are starting to build up. So that's kind of one area that I see. And it's okay, let's be thoughtful in what we want to do with that. But ideally, we've been planning for this moment. So we can't spend it too quickly because we may have it allocated towards goals, which is the other side of the equation, which is, well, what if we've just started to spend it? Because we've seen that we have this extra money now. So now we're just starting to spend it. I don't need to cook anymore. I'm going out all the time. I'm no longer vacationing with the entire family. So I've upgraded my flights and my resort that I'm going to. So there's still the big difference between the spenders and the savers out there. So I would say that's a big item that I notice, as well as the emotional side. Emotions have, as you know, have a huge impact to somebody's thoughts about their finances and everything. And not having the kids at home, it's a big shift. And if you're single versus a couple, that's even a bigger shift as far as, now we're spending time with your spouse more than you did before. So from a financial perspective, is that hurting us or helping us? Are we volunteering a little bit more? So that was another area that I've seen that had picked up quite a bit, was people reinvesting back into their communities, into the organizations that they had a passion for, that they really never had the time to do anymore. And then another theme I would say really does come down to the careers. People making a career shift or being more decisive in what their role is at work and what they want to do. And so I've seen quite a few people leave the workforce and do something different, but something that is still generating income, but something that they're more passionate about. And they're working because they enjoy it, not because they have to.
Yeah, I think that most people, when they think about empty nesters, they think of the emotional side of your kids leaving and maybe relief of having everybody gone. But at the same time, they don't think about all the changes that happen financially. It's like you said, you have more cash flow, but also you end up maybe spending more on yourself than you thought you would, because now you also have time.
Correct.
You're not going to all your kids' events and doing all these things. So it does change a lot. There's so much financial and emotional change going on. And I think that the question, I think you said this before, what does this next chapter look like, is a really big one, because it almost is like you have to plan for what's next, even though it's not retirement. What does this interim look like?
Right. Right. And that's where planning is so important. It's almost as if you have this career, you get an annual bonus in April, you're planning for that bonus. We have already allocated where that bonus is going when it arrives. Same thing holds true when you officially become an empty nester. You're not planning on the day you become an empty nester. You're planning leading up to that moment. And so what I've seen over my career is it is much easier to be focused on the day to day. How am I paying the daycare bills? How am I going to fund the college education? How am I making, the mortgage payments? Or I need to do a refi. I have to purchase a new car. It's easier to focus on that than it is to focus on the long term. And when you focus on the short term, you tend to get a little bit more stressed about the money. You feel like you're living paycheck to paycheck. Things get tight. But if you start to forecast it out a few years and you start to see, well, daycare ends, so we're saving $1,800 a month. where can that $1,800 a month go now? You still have summer camps, you still have other things, but now we can inch up that 401k a little bit. Or maybe now you can make that Roth contribution, or you can pay down that credit card bill. And then once that's taken care of, maybe that's 5 years down the road, now we have a little bit of extra cash flow. And when you start to communicate and show clients that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that you will begin to breathe a little bit better, it makes them feel more comfortable when knowing that things are really tight right now. So that's a conversation that I've had often is, this is temporary. Ideally your kids are going to be off the payroll. If they're not, then that's a whole other ebook that has to get written, because that's another situation. But if, to your point, if we're planning for it and everything, then we can have fun with the money. We can say, let's focus on you a little bit. Let's do some traveling. Let's, do some spending. But at the same time, are we still good for the goals that you have? Are there tax changes that we need to make because of the change in income and everything? So again, it's all put together. And it's unfortunate. I don't mean to relate it to this topic, but sometimes being an empty nester is almost going through the stages of grief. You have kind of this extra money, or it feels like extra money, and you want to spend, you want to make quick decisions. You're emotional because your kids aren't here. You're going through a lot of changes. We're older, and especially as females, we're going through a lot of emotions and everything to deal with at the same time with the financial side. So some of the decisions that we make can be very similar to when you actually lose a spouse.
Yeah. Sometimes they think about it being like, oh, I'm going to feel relieved, but they don't think about the grief part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's also, like you said, when we have that extra cash flow and you're like, oh, we can go do these things now, I think it's easy to just absorb it and start spending it without making an intentional decision about it. So I think that one of the things that you probably talk to people about is, how can we be intentional about this? So what are the things you have people think through before they decide? Like, are we saving? Are we investing? Are we paying down debt? How much can we spend on travel? How do you walk them through those decisions?
Yeah, it's great questions. And those are all the big questions that we're asking. I usually start with, when we're looking at a paycheck, a lot of people don't know how much they actually make. If you say, well, what's your salary? They're like, I think it's around this. And then we'll pull up a pay stub and they may go, oh, I actually got a raise. That it's not anything that everybody sees, because everything's direct deposited. The money is there. You just spend it because it's there. So being purposeful in, let's look at the paycheck and let's see what is actually getting deposited. Then let's actually look at the bank accounts and let's just average what's coming out each month to kind of get a baseline of where we are. And then start talking about, we have some excess. Ideally, there's excess, but sometimes there's not. So then starting to focus on your debt management. What debts do we still have out there? Do we have student loans that we're helping the kids on? Do we have a line of credit on the house? Do we still have some credit card debt? And then prioritizing that as well. So ideally, these conversations are very familiar with clients because they've been conversations that have happened throughout that time. But if somebody's coming to me on day one and they've just become an empty nester, it's talking about, okay, well, what are your goals? Do you plan on staying in the house? Do we want to downsize? If we want to downsize, are we moving somewhere where in the end it's still going to cost us the same amount of money, but we just have a smaller house? So it's really just asking those thought-provoking questions to get the client to dig into their decisions. And sometimes the spouses may disagree on what that looks like and what they want it to be. And so that's when the fun conversation happens, and really starting to come together and looking at how we can make it work through compromise, and where can we leverage the benefits? Where can we leverage the savings? And in a perfect world, Linda, you would want to be able to check all the boxes and make everything happen. We don't live in a perfect world, so we try to make everything happen with the least amount of pain. And then sometimes the pain comes involved. And what can that pain be? That pain can be that we have to cut down some of our spending. Even though we're empty nesters, we still may be doing a lot of gifting to the kids. We may feel bad that, they have this bill for an apartment and they have a car loan, and I'm just going to pay their auto insurance and I'm just going to pay their cell phone bill. It's on the family plan. We have to put that into consideration. At some point, we have to cut the cord.
Yeah.
And it's tough. Definitely. I know it's tough.
This is when they come to me and they say, I'm behind and I need to catch up. Like, my kids are gone now, and now I need to start thinking about this stuff. I feel like I'm not going to ever be able to retire. But to me, it seems like this, I feel behind and I need to catch up, means so many different things to different people because they all say the same thing, but they're in very different, financial situations.
Yeah,
So
correct.
tell me what you see. Do you see the same thing?
I do. I think it's a matter of perspective, and what is a lot of money to one person is not a lot of money to another person. So when somebody says, I feel like I'm behind, I need to catch up, they have to define for me, what is behind? When did you think you were going to retire? Did you think it was yesterday? And not trying to be smart about it, but trying to understand, well, what do you want that reality to be? And if you say, well, I want to retire in 5 years, okay, well, how do we do this? That may involve some sacrifices. You're not going out to eat all the time. You're not taking the nice vacations, but retirement could look really good if we sacrifice on a few of these things. And again, it's prioritizing I'll just use an example of employer benefits. A lot of people leave money on the table with the employer, whether it's through HSA matching, whether it's through 401k matching, whether it's through a variety of financial wellness programs that they offer. Really starting to look at the employer side of where's all my free money that I can get to kind of help with some of these things. Then am I wasting any money on stuff? I do an extra painful exercise once a year where I actually look at all the streaming services we have and wonder, do I really need all these things? And start canceling some of them, or I'll contact the company and there's obviously a promo for 6 months or something like that. Those little things add up over time. If I can save $20 a month on a streaming service and I can put that $20 into, let's say, a Roth 401k, I'm going to get much more benefit over that in a long time, over the long term. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't look at it that way. They only see it as, it's $20. What can that do? It can do a lot. And that's really kind of reinforcing some of those conversations. But every perspective is different. That's why I don't like using averages when people say, well, how much should I have in retirement? It depends on what you want to spend. Are we spending $10,000 a month in retirement, $20,000 a month in retirement? What is it that you want to do? So we try to look at, let's try to just replace what you're doing right now. Let's look at, you're comfortable with your lifestyle. Let's minimally try and do that. Then we get to upgrade. So let's then go from there. I do want to go back though on the point when we went a little bit on a tangent on looking at kind of where the opportunities are for some of these young adults. Because when we talk empty nesters, we're assuming the kids have fully launched. Mm-hmm. In a lot of situations, the kids have not fully launched because of the things that you mentioned. So while you may not have college tuition bills anymore, they're still at home. So you do have some extra savings from not having the education expenses. But with them being at home, how does that impact the life? You were planning on downsizing. You were planning on selling that home, but now they're still here. So has that derailed our plans in any way? And those are then tougher conversations too. Or now you're starting to help your parents who are going through some type of decline. So yes, I'm an empty nester. The kids are out, they've launched, they're on their own. And then all of a sudden, mom or dad is having some cognitive decline. They didn't do well saving financially. You're now helping to support, or guess what? They're moving in with you. So that's a different type of conversation for an empty nester as well. And that's a lot of conversations happening lately.
That is a very common conversation happening. And part of what I think with the parents especially is that they don't realize is that there are alternatives and there's some help and support out there, which is a whole nother podcast episode. But it's really a balance. And it's that idea that we're always wanting to help other people, but at some point we need to start putting ourselves first. And I love that you mentioned the matching on the employer things, because that's one thing that I always go back to in my conversations with my clients, because that's like saying, I'm going to pay you $110,000 a year. And you say, okay, but I'm only going to take 105 because you're leaving the part of your comp is that matching.
Right.
Who would say that, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's reframing it to say this is part of your deserved compensation and you need to take advantage of it. You might have to make some sacrifices to get it there, like putting your own money in that they can match. But oh my gosh, how much better are you going to be in the long run? This is free money. It's money that is there for you. So I wanted to bring that back into, and just the idea of always thinking of your future self at different points in time and having that plan to understand who that future self is a big part of figuring all these different life stages out, right?
Well, and I think too, that's what's hard for a lot of people to think about when they're in the thick of it with young kids, to thinking about that future self, but continually putting that into the conversation allows that client to start thinking about themselves, because you kind of have guilt of putting yourself ahead of everybody else. But once you make it a little bit more comfortable and common, then you get to start thinking about what life looks like in the future, which I think is really good. The other thing about coming back to the matching and everything on the employer benefits, it's also understanding what all those vehicles are and how to best use them as well. So it's not just about receiving that match and that free money, but ideally you're not spending the HSA, you're letting it build up and you're letting it be used for something down the road. So there's a lot of financial education that's part of these conversations as well, because maybe we've never had an opportunity to talk about it before. When thinking about somebody's compensation and bonuses, I try to encourage everybody, don't live off the bonus. Don't assume that the bonus is always going to be there, because the company can change their minds. The calculations can change. Everything can change. So if we can say the bonus is going to be used for that deck remodel you want to do, or the additional savings into the 529, or additional savings into an investment account of some sort, allocating it towards that versus it cycling into cash flow, it makes it a little easier when you're planning for retirement, because you're used to just living off of the salary, not salary plus bonus. So when working with corporate executives, as an example, there's all parts of their stock option planning, restricted stock units, all of those things that we try not to incorporate into the day-to-day expenses, but primarily used for that long-term planning. So when empty nest stage comes, I have all these different stock options that I can begin using and leveraging and managing the taxes and everything that way as well.
Yeah, all great points. What are some of the other things that you cover in your book that maybe we haven't talked about yet?
One of them is the fun stuff. It's vacations. It's kind of talking about, I love telling clients that they can upgrade their vacations, get the business class, get the first class seat, obviously if we can afford it and everything. But one of my favorite parts about my job is just to be able to dream with clients, to be able to think of, as you said, your future self. What are the things that you want to accomplish? The financial side is, okay, well, how do we make that happen? How do we execute it? But it's fun to talk about what is it that we actually want to be able to do. So I enjoy that aspect of the book, whether it's the volunteer side, whether it's the traveling, it's all the fun stuff that's outside of work. The financial aspect of the areas in the book, we've covered quite a bit of them, but some of them are looking at just, again, your benefits, things that, the kids are off the benefits, or we don't have to stay where we are right now. So we can start thinking about, is this truly the career that you want? Is this where you want to be? Or can we leverage the equity in the home and we can downsize and we can buy the beach house that you've always dreamed of? So that kind of comes back to focusing on yourself. As I mentioned, there's different types of conversations depending on that individual situation. Are they recently divorced? Has a spouse passed away? Are they a couple who's planning together? Has it been one wage earner in that married couple the entire time? And the wife typically was the one taking care of the kids, and again, the kids are gone. So she's kind of finding her purpose again. And so talking about whether it's volunteerism, whether going back to school, taking a different career, that has an impact within the marriage as well. So, I'm sure as you do too, you have a lot of non-financial conversations with clients, right? It's therapy all day long. And that therapy helps us make better financial recommendations because we know the personalities, we understand the stresses and the emotions. And that's one of my favorite parts of the job.
Yeah. And that's why the podcast is called Real Money, Real Life. That's exactly why. Okay. If you had one big takeaway for someone who's realizing, okay, the kids are launched or about to launch, and now I need to figure out what comes next for me, what would be the one thing you would want them to remember?
Oh, the one thing. I would tell them to get a pen and paper out and tell them, what do these next 5 years look like for you? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Almost like that job interview question. You get to think about yourself. You get to think about your future, and it doesn't involve, well, I'm going to put the kids through college, or I'm going to do camp, or I have this or that. Like, no, what is it that you want? What do you want to do? And you have to take time to do that. That's not just I get a pen and paper out and I scribble something on there. Really think about, as you said, which I like the framing of your future self. What does that future self look like in 5 years? That starts the process, because then we get to work backwards and then think about, how do we get there? What would we have to accomplish to make this happen? And I've had clients that say, well, I want a career change. I want to do something to where this passion that I have, it may cut my salary in half. Okay, well, maybe you can't quit today, but maybe in 3 years you can, because we've been saving money for that. So it's finding out, what is it that you want? Because when you start asking and you start putting it to paper, the answers are quite surprising. And it's a lot different than what, people are doing right now, because they actually get to focus on themselves. This is their next chapter, which is exciting.
It is exciting. Are there common pressures or beliefs that people have that you feel like they need to let go of?
I think it's, if I say to you, let's say you have a few kids that have launched, and you talk about, we really want to sell this house. Well, where do you want to move to? Well, we have to figure out where the kids are going to settle. That's a very common one, because now you're putting their needs above your own. Don't think about the kids. Where do you want to settle? So, that common theme of I don't want to call it a misconception, but I feel like that's the answer I should give because I'm a parent and that's what I should say, right? The other item is people want to be able to budget for weddings. Obviously, a lot of us want to be able to pay for our kids' kids' wedding expenses after education and everything. I think they're very misaligned on what weddings cost these days. So, average wedding expense is over $45,000, and that's for like a wedding of 100 people. People always go over that 45. So when parents are talking about setting aside money for a future wedding, I think they have to be realistic on how much are they going to set aside, and really put some guardrails to that as well. The other thing I would say is, a lot of people just assume we should be debt-free. There's good debt that's out there that's okay to have. Obviously, high interest, non-deductible debt is not the best type of debt to have, but don't be super focused or stressed on paying everything off the second that you need to retire, the second that, you want to be able to have that cash flow. Make sure it's a smart decision.
Great things to think about. Thank you for sharing those. All right, tell us, who needs to find you? Who do you work with?
So as a firm, we work with a variety of individuals, primarily because we have a fantastic advisor base that serves, I don't want to say everybody, but pretty much everybody, which is great. So depending on, if you're a government employee, a military worker, you're a retired individual, a female, a young professional, our team of certified financial planners is able to help, which is fantastic. And so we have a very collaborative environment. When you go to our website at bfgfa.com, you see advisors of all shapes and sizes and colors and ages and sexes. And it's great because we don't look like your typical financial planning firm. And so if, let's say, somebody was calling me and they were in process of selling a business, well, that's not my area of expertise. That's my colleague's area of expertise. So I'm able to make that healthy introduction. So for this specific topic, though, dealing with empty nesters, I would say anybody that's about 10 years away from, seeing that the kids are going to be launched and everything. You're kind of in that stage of just starting the middle school era, and we're in the thick of it with education planning and everything, because then we can really start planning for their future, not just for the kids.
Great. And tell us where they can find you.
So directly at our website at bfgfa.com, they can find us and our contact information. And then we have a lot of resources, free resources, whether it's ebooks, webinars, podcasts, at bfguniversity.com.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being my guest today, Lena. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And here's my closing nugget for you. Thanks for listening all the way to the end. When kids are finally off the payroll, the question is not just what do we do with the extra cash flow? It's what does this next chapter need from us? The season can be a time to catch up, refocus, and make yourself part of the plan again, but only if you pause long enough to decide where that money and energy should go. The goal is not to get it perfect, it's just to make choices that support the life you are building now. Thanks so much for listening to Real Money, Real Life. Want to see what's blocking you from financial confidence or discover your money personality? Head to the resources page at lindagriz.com for our free quizzes. That's LINDAGRIZ.com/resources. If you're loving what you're learning, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. It helps more people find these conversations. This show is hosted and produced by Linda Grizely Ventures, LLC. Linda Grizely, that's me, is an investment advisor representative of Nectarine, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Linda Grizely Ventures, LLC is separate and unaffiliated with Nectarine. The views expressed on this show are those of the individuals expressing them and do not necessarily reflect the views of Linda Grizely Ventures, LLC, or Nectarine. Guests on the podcast may express opinions or discuss financial strategies that are their own and should not be considered recommendations or personalized financial advice. This podcast is provided for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as personalized investment advice or a solicitation to buy or sell any securities or other products. Listeners should consult their own financial, legal, or tax professionals regarding their specific situation. Please visit hellonectarine.com and lindagriz.com for all relevant disclosures.